Well, hey there everybody, and welcome back for another Sundays in the Garden. I thought this week we'd start off in the studio with this sand dollar you see here and show you how well it's done since I brought it in last year. As you can see, it's clearly grown quite a bit, but it's also quite weak. So I need to get some sort of stake in there, I think. But before I do that, I figured I'd show you we've got a pepper. Actually, we've got a few, but we've got one pepper in particular that's coming along quite nicely. So if we scan along this one particularly lengthy branch, we come to this green little pepper start in here. Now these are not huge peppers. I'm thinking it gets to be about there. Been a couple years since I had one of these, fully ripe. As y'all know, this one did not produce anything last year. That's why I was so desperate to keep it alive. And we are operating under the wrong spectrum of an LED work lamp here, so I have no idea how long this is going to take to get ripe and take color. But I am thrilled that it's actually got the beginning of a pepper on it. And I was so convinced this thing was going to die over the winter. Now look at it. Madness. Out here trying to harden off on the evening porch, we have the black lace elderberry cutting. This is not looking like it's doing particularly well, but the other one lived through the winter, so I'm hopeful this one will live through the spring. And then if it does, we're just going to plant it right in front of the IBC tote there, so that the two of them can kind of grow up and cover it and give it a little shade from the heat of the sun there. Goji berries are going wild. That's going to be great. But back to the porch. Still haven't planted out those strawberries or the grape yet. But that one cup where I planted, it was like a random red cherry tomato we got from the grocery store. Even though the tomato itself died, I've got a ton of little seedlings coming up in there. So that's going to be fun. A random pepper back there that needs to go out in the garden still. Couple of planted peppers there. A few more still in that meat box. Good sturdy cardboard, that meat box. And then out here in the main garden area, you can see I've actually managed to give most of the peppers much better space this year. Tried to put the taller ones towards the back. We'll see how this all works out. A couple of them, like these crimson reds in the corner, these guys have had a rough journey as it is. Struggling a little bit with coming outside, but I'm hoping they'll make it. So far, I've only really lost this one little tiny habanero there, and those guys weren't much in the way of starts to begin with. Looks like the reaper that I planted here underneath the milk carton has come through and made it to the other side. The weary back there is doing alright. That sage is definitely doing much better. The beans and the peas look great. Definitely need to make them some sort of trellis soon. The watermelon seemed to have survived being transplanted in the garden just fine. That one little bit of seed tape, if you look carefully, we can see a couple of ravaged plants in there. Yeah, that's all that's come up out of that. And of course, the pests are going for the crop and none of the weeds that are available to the side. So, I've got to clean that up a little bit, but it looks like those two might make it. I'm leaning towards turnip. Anybody who knows their root crop leaves, you can let me know what you think about that. Got a couple of sweeter peppers up here. They seem to have survived their transplant. And then over here, I believe those are the early cantaloupes. Also doing just fine. Not a lot of growth on them yet, and I am still planning on stretching them out over the unused lawn space there. Well, same with all of the vining crops up front here, really. Those pumpkins there, the same deal. And over on the end of that bed here, we've got that one tomato that I was pretty sure was dead. Seems to be struggling through, and looks like it might also be an indigo rose. So that would be great. Good place for it. Those get 6 feet-ish, give or take. And over here in the random potato planter we have random potatoes. Didn't actually plant any potatoes this year. Must be from last year. So that'll be interesting. But at least it started nice and early, so it's got time to develop whatever crop it's going to develop. That'll be real educational digging this up at the end of the season. Back of the pepper patch here, I still need to pull up those few rows of corn that were far too close. Maybe put in 2 more rows of peppers because I still have a few to plant out. And up here we can see things are doing alright. Looks like I've lost 1 cabbage so far out of this bed. But really for me, that's a great survival rate. 1 cabbage down, 1 pepper down. It's practically nothing at all. Up here in the bunker, currently camouflaged as a wheat field. Need to come in here with the lawn shears and clean that up. But I sort of kind of randomly planted some corn in here. A little different from last year. It's not in tight rows. It's in little clusters, and we'll see those better as more of them come up. But if we look in there, we can see the little specks of green in the groupings. Those are my corn. I also sprinkled an old packet of Market More cucumbers on top of this because they like to climb, and we're going to see how that all works out. So who knows, I might get corn, I might get cucumbers, I might just get some butternut squash, which doesn't look like it's doing great, but if you look at the new growth in the middle, it's much stronger than the stuff that was in the greenhouse, so I'm not terribly worried about it. Hello, dragonflies. And finally back here in the spruce garden area, because I still don't really have a better name for it, my squash mound area, I don't know. There's still nothing coming up in the spaghetti squash or in the baby pumpkins, but over here in the acorn squash, I found that the other day. So in addition to some weeds that I need to pull out, I have at least 2 acorn squash seeds that are starting up there. And over here beside it, I see at least 1 more. Fantastic. Acorn squash are a delightful little squash. And I do have a couple of sunflowers popping up here. So I might actually get seeds out of this short season. So yeah, we'll see how this works out this year. Last year we had some spaghetti squash kind of take down some of the sunflowers. Didn't really climb up it so much as, yeah, knock it down, but it's all an educational experience. Grow, grow, grow! So not a whole lot changing and growing on here just yet. Still really early in my season, but I've got a lot of things out so far, and yeah, not a whole lot of death so far. So I'm pretty pleased with that. If you're still with me, well, thank you all for watching, and we'll check back on things next week. Take care, everybody.